I know I'm kind of late to this whole discussion. A million other YouTube channels that are 1,000 times bigger than me already covered this, but I just wanted to get my thoughts out there on the Super Mario Brothers movie, which came out last week at the time of this recording, because, well, I love Super Mario Brothers, like most people, so I was looking forward to this movie quite a bit. Admittedly, I was going in pretty skeptical, a little afraid that I wasn't going to like it, and long story short, it turned out pretty darn good. I'm not going to really cover like the good and the bad. I'm going to go through just certain talking points, like references, the story, the music, the visuals, and I'll do each character individually, main characters, and stuff like that. I'm not really going to break it up into like the good, the bad, and all that. So I guess I'll jump right in with the story is where I'll start off. Now, the story is definitely something that nobody's really expecting much from a Super Mario Brothers movie. Going into it, based on the earliest knowledge we had of the movie, I was thinking it was really going to be a 100% retelling of the first Super Mario Brothers for NES or Famicom, and it's really not. It kind of is. So we get references to the fact that Wrecking Crew already took place, and we kind of get Mario Brothers in the sewers of Brooklyn, and then that leads into Super Mario Brothers. But then there's like a big wrench thrown in that when we have stuff like Mario meeting Donkey Kong in the Mushroom Kingdom for the first time. So Pauline and Mario exist in Brooklyn prior to the events in the movie, and then Donkey Kong is met for the first time in the Mushroom Kingdom. So there's definitely inconsistencies in the timeline of the games. Actually, that being said, before I go any further, I will just say that there are going to be spoilers all over this review. I'm not doing any section as no spoilers. If I really want to talk about the movie, I have to talk about every second of the movie. So if you don't want anything spoiled, which I do have to tell you, there's not much to spoil in this movie, but if you don't want to be spoiled and you want to experience everything fresh when you see the movie, don't listen to me yet. Go watch the movie. It's worth watching, and then come back and listen, please. But yeah, so once they get into the Mushroom Kingdom, Mario and Luigi are instantly separated, and Mario ends up in the Mushroom Kingdom, Luigi ends up in the Badlands, which is, World 8, basically. Bowser's world. Lava and scary dead trees and castles and dry bones and ghosts and all that stuff. So Mario meets the mushroom people, the toads or whatever. I always rather call them mushroom people and just leave Toad as the name of the main one, instead of they're all toads, but one of them is named Toad, and it's weird. But regardless, he meets the toads and he meets Peach. Peach basically trains him to become the hero that, we all want him to be. And she gets him ready to help the kingdom fight Bowser. They have this whole plan that they're going to recruit the Kong army from the Congo jungle, which is like a neighboring province, which is a bit weird because they, aside from Donkey Kong himself, none of the Kongs end up contributing at all. So they really didn't need to do that. But the idea is that the Toads are basically worthless. So they need the Kongs because the Kongs are all super strong. So I'm not going to go through the whole story like, and then this happened, and then that happened, because that's not very interesting. I'm just going to basically say, long story short, Mario, Peach, and Toad have to save Luigi from Bowser. Bowser wants to marry Peach. He ends up actually kidnapping Peach and forcing her to marry him. But then at the wedding, everything flips, and the good guys end up beating the Koopa troops, but then Bowser follows them through the warp pipe into Brooklyn. There's a big final battle, and Mario and Luigi save the day. My biggest problem with this story, by far, is that Luigi doesn't do anything. He's barely in the movie at all. He's mostly just captured, and we see him in a cage for most of the movie. He's just a complete coward. Even when they get back to Brooklyn at the end, and the final battle's going on, Luigi spends most of the time like hiding in a dumpster because he's just, I get it. He's like afraid of everything. That was his joke originally, actually, in the Super Mario Brothers Super Show. Then later on, Nintendo themselves sort of adopted that idea, and then in games like Luigi's Mansion, they started making that like his whole shtick, is that he's afraid of everything. But yeah, I mean, the movie is called the Super Mario Brothers movie. I kind of thought it was going to be about the brothers. I mean, the trailers made it pretty clear that Luigi was going to be captured most of the movie, but it is just kind of weird to call it the Super Mario Brothers movie and have it only be about one of the brothers. It's also a shame because I really like the family dynamic with Mario and Luigi at the beginning of the movie. I like the fact that they gave them like this big Italian family. I love their family. It's a ton of fun watching, you know, them all hang out at the dinner table and eat pasta, and just the dynamic between all of them. It's cute how, you know, close Mario and Luigi are, how supportive of each other they are. It's the kind of thing that's like sort of hinted at in the games, but you couldn't really ever get in the games. It really takes like a movie to really breathe that life into the characters and make them that much more relatable and human. And I think the games, that's not their point. You know, Mario games are just meant to entertain and be fun, but it definitely adds a layer to the characters that makes them much more likable. I will say the story's a little disjointed. It is a little bit like and then this happened kind of movie. It's not really like this happened because of that, and then as a result this happens. It's more just like, and then this happens, and then that happens, and then this. But it feels like a video game. It's entertaining. It's never boring. There's not 1 second of that movie that's boring. So I don't think anyone's going here for like really deep storytelling. So I think it's fine for what it is. The visuals are, you know, like your average modern animated movie is hyper colorful, hyper detailed, hyper textured, just crazy visual, you know, gags and references in every single scene, just hidden, just as far as the eye can see, there's just detail. And it is impressive. It is beautiful looking, but I have kind of admittedly grown numb to that. I think, unfortunately, I've reached a point where there's really nothing you can do with CGI that's going to really like wow me ever again. Like, I've just become, you know, used to CGI. It just is not going to blow my mind. 2D animation, there's still always stuff that's like, oh wow, how did they do that? Like, they can blow your mind, or even if it's not in that level, it can just look exceptionally amazing. But I think CG, as good as it can possibly look, and this looks very good, this is very clean CG. I will say though, I kind of take it for granted, unfortunately, because I've just seen so much CG at this point that I kind of just take CG for granted. It's very colorful. It's definitely going for that. You know, I think like ever since like Guardians of the Galaxy 2, there's been this big push in Hollywood movies to be like very colorful, abstract backgrounds, a lot of pinks and purples and oranges and just these crazy colors, these like sherbet colors, everything ultra saturated. That's what this movie does, and that works very well for Mario. I mean, the games are so colorful that I think it works perfectly for Mario. It's definitely the way I think it should have been done today. Like, personally, I would prefer a 2D Mario movie, a hand-drawn Mario movie, but realistically, that's not the world we live in. So, since it was clearly going to be made with CG the whole time, this is, I think, the best-looking type of CG we could have gotten. I do like how expressive all the characters are, because as much as I love the Mario games, I will say the character designs and models within the world of the games are very, very static. They're not very expressive. There's not a whole lot of like morphing or squash and stretch animation or stuff. Like, everything is just kind of like, every character kind of looks like a squeak toy. There's like a rubber squeak toy, and they're really not that expressive at all. I don't even know if I've ever seen a 3D model of Peach. Not like a polygon one, but like, you know, the 3D character artwork. I don't know if I've ever seen one where she's like angry or anything. Like, they kind of always just have like that one facial expression that every character is just permanently making. And I definitely think this movie improves that, in that characters are extremely expressive. You know, they can have all kinds of different personalities in their faces, all kinds of emotions. Their bodies are so much more animated and fluent and everything than they are in the games, where they're much more restricted. I think most of the character redesigns are pretty good. Peach's face, when they first showed it off in the advertising, took me a second to warm up to, but I actually do think it looks really good in the movie. Mario and Luigi look great. Bowser looks fantastic. He looks really good. Donkey Kong looks good. Yeah, Cranky Kong looks good. I think at first he took me a second to warm up to, but I actually like what they did with him a lot. I like the creativity in his animation. It's something that I always used as an example when talking to people about good animation, creative animation, when utilizing a character's physical design. I would always bring up King Louie from the Jungle Book and talk about how there's scenes where he shrugs with his feet and all this stuff. He does all this stuff with his feet as if they're his hands, because his hands are like grabbing a branch or something. But it's done so naturally that you barely even notice that he's doing it, because the artists are just so creatively utilizing the unique design of that creature to portray human emotions in a unique way. And they actually do that with Cranky. He does a lot of stuff with his feet and all, like he's using them like hands, because, you know, monkeys have prehensile feet. So it was definitely very creative with how it animated a lot of its characters. Kamek looked great. I will say probably the only redesigns of characters I was a little iffy on was Diddy Kong and Dixie Kong, which they weren't promoted or anything. They were hidden in the background of like Donkey Kong's poster and stuff, but they're in the movie and they don't speak. They're just like cameos basically. Well, Diddy speaks, but Dixie doesn't speak. But they're in the movie though, and they zoom in on them a few times. I think you hear Dixie go "aw" maybe. But their faces and their outfits and their bodies, just everything about them is very drastically redesigned. Where I feel like all the other characters look very close to their in-game models. For some reason, Diddy and Dixie look drastically different from how they do in the games. Like, their builds are different. They're like a lot more like thin, I think, a little more slender. They're not like as round as they are in the games. And they're, you know, in the games they have Sonic the Hedgehog eye. They have like, you know, one big kind of double lump white eyepiece with, you know, two pupils on it. But in here they have like separated eyes. They have very like chimpy kind of faces. Like, they almost look like the NFTs of like Board Chimp or whatever. Like, they kind of have that look to them. Dixie's not wearing her outfit at all. There's no knee pads. There's no, you know, like tied up crop top like she wears in the game. She's just wearing like a generic like sleeveless t-shirt, I think. It's a bit weird. I found that just stood out to me. Like, everyone else is so accurate, but then Diddy and Dixie were like so drastically different from how they are in the games. And, you know, I'm down for redesigns, but that one just kind of was like, I don't really like what they did with these redesigns too much. I know Cranky's wearing a completely different outfit. Honestly, I actually really like the outfit they gave him in the movie. It's a cool idea of what a Kong king would wear. But as for the audio points in the movie, the score is awesome, because every second of the movie that is not a pop song, which is most of the movie, every single second of the score is a Mario song, is a video game song. There's no ounce of that score that is not video game music, I believe. As soon as the movie starts, you hear the Mario 3 Doom Ship music, and there's Mario 64 music, Mario 1, Mario 2, Mario World, Mario 3, you know, Mario Galaxy, Mario 3D World, the new Super Mario Brothers. Like, there's just so much Mario music in this movie. There's even Donkey Kong Country music. Donkey Kong 64 gets the DK rap, which there's an issue there where they didn't credit Grant Kirkhope for writing the song, and that's pretty messed up. But it's in there. There's just a ton of video game music in the movie, tons of Nintendo music, and that's exactly what you want to hear. I'm not going to dump on the Sonic movies, because I think those are still great movies, but I will say that is a disappointing thing about Sonic, especially, you know, everyone loves the music of Sonic. The fact that you get nothing but a couple teases of Green Hill Zone in both movies. There's like a tease of Green Hill Zone in each movie. And you get Being Friends from Sonic Mania, I think it's called, or Best Friends, whatever. That song from Sonic Mania, Sonic Mania's intro. You get that in the first movie, and that's really it. Aside from that, it's really just like a generic movie score. So the Mario movie definitely wins with the score. Even though they had a score that's all Mario music, I'm still hearing people bitch that they had pop songs, and it's like, I guess you just can't please anybody, because, like, you have the first video game movie score ever that is entirely music from the games, and people still complain. But I mean, to each their own. I can see why some people would rather just it all be Mario music and not have any pop songs. I like the ones they picked. I think the most jarring one for me was like the Kill Bill song playing with the penguins at the beginning. That was like, really? We're doing this? But Take On Me, that song's just fun no matter what you put it in. And it matched the scene. I was tapping my foot. Like, it's supposed to be a really fun, fast scene, and I was just dancing in the theater. So it worked for me. They had a lot of 80s stuff. No Sleep Till Brooklyn was good because, they were in Brooklyn. I think it was a good use of a lot of pop songs, honestly. I like that they didn't do any, like, modern, horrible pop rap stuff that you usually hear in these movies. I like that it was just, it was mostly 80s stuff, some 90s stuff and all. I think there was like a 70s song in there or two. It was all stuff kind of from around the time when Mario came out, so it kind of fit it a little bit better, I think. But in general, I think the audio department wins hardcore. I'm not going to talk about the voices in the audio section. I'll cover each character's voice individually when I cover the characters individually later on. So one of the reasons I thought I was going to hate this movie, or not, I didn't think I was going to hate it, but I was afraid I might hate this movie going into it, was I did not want this to be another reference movie. We have so many movies these days, like Ready Player One, and Space Jam: A New Legacy, and Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, and Free Guy, and just all this stuff, Ralph Breaks the Internet, that is just a pile of references. It's just a company either showing off all the stuff they own, like Ralph Breaks the Internet, and waving it in your face, basically like, waving their power in your face, or it's just a bunch of references to things in pop culture that you should know, and that's supposed to make up for the fact that there's nothing to the movie. So I was really afraid this was just going to be a bunch of video game references and cameos and just hollow stuff like that, and there wouldn't be any entertainment beyond that. And there are a ton of references in the movie, but in all honesty, they're not distracting. I think for the most part, they're not very distracting. I think if you're not a Nintendo fan, you're not like a hardcore fan, you don't know all of them, certain ones like Diddy and Dixie, where like they actually stop the whole movie to draw attention to it, will be annoying. But I think most people on Earth know who Diddy Kong is. I think most people on Earth know Mario. Mario is just one of those brands that everybody knows. So I think it works really well. There's just a lot of love put in there. When they're in Brooklyn, the first shot of Brooklyn is in a bar where all over the walls it shows all the Punch-Out fighters on there. Later on, you see the whole bar is called like the Punch-Out Pizzeria or something. But yeah, it's just covered in Punch-Out fighters, like how bars always have boxers on the walls. Which, that was awesome to see. Especially since, Little Mac's supposed to be from the Bronx, I believe. So it's like he would be kind of like a local legend, I guess. So all the opponents he fought being in the bar is pretty cool. Obviously, Foreman Spike from Wrecking Crew's in there. He's a full-blown character in the movie, though. But he's in there. He's got the little Wrecking Crew logo on his hat. And you have a Jumpman arcade cabinet, which is, Mario's original name, and Donkey Kong, and a guy who looks like the original Mario, voiced by Charles Martinet, no less, is playing that arcade cabinet. Mario's dad is voiced by Charles Martinet. Mario goes into his bedroom, kind of annoyed at one point, and he's playing Kid Icarus on NES, and there's a pro wrestling poster in the background, which is crazy that there's like a pro wrestling reference. But all through the movie, there was other NES ones. Like there's a balloon fight store sign. There's one with the Ice Climbers polar bear. One with like the Duck Hunt duck. There's just Nintendo stuff everywhere, like NES stuff everywhere. And then in the Mushroom Kingdom, there's like constant references to anything from the games. There's even those little weird slinky enemies, or big, I shouldn't say they're huge, but those big slinky enemies from New Super Mario Brothers Wii and stuff. And there's just, every second, there's like a reference. Luigi's cell phone ringtone is the GameCube startup jingle. So I do think the movie is absolutely packed with references, but for the most part, none of them really bothered me. They didn't ever really get in the way of the enjoyment of the movie. They didn't just stop everything and have some character walk onto the screen just to say a couple meta jokes and then walk away. There really wasn't a whole lot of those like meta jokes. I'm really glad that there wasn't, because I'm so sick of meta humor. I hate meta humor. I hate fourth wall breaking jokes now. Like, you know, I love that stuff back in the day. I loved, one of my favorite games is The Lost Vikings, and I thought it was so funny every time they broke the fourth wall and mentioned they were in a video game or mentioned the player. But, you know, it's just been done to death ever since Deadpool blew up. And I just like, everyone's trying to be Deadpool, and I'm so sick of it. And I'm really glad they didn't do too much of that in this movie. They didn't do what most property-based movies do these days, where they just dump all on the original source material. Like Mario's not making jokes about how stupid the world is or how illogical everything in the world of Mario is. He makes some here and there, you know, where he's like weirded out by it. There's some I could do without, like, oh, that gorilla's wearing a sports coat. Like, yes, we can see the gorilla's wearing a sports coat. Mentioning it doesn't make it any funnier. But for the most part, they don't do that. And they don't do it in, like, a hateful way. The movie loves Super Mario Brothers. And it loves letting you know that it is paying respect to Super Mario Brothers. There's nothing in the movie that's, like, at the expense of the original franchise. It's all a loving tribute. And I couldn't be happier with that. Okay, now I guess I'll go into each character, main character. I'll start with Mario, since, you know, he's the main paisano of the film. So going into this movie, everyone was just certain they were going to hate Mario because Chris Pratt was voicing him, and people hate celebrities for reasons all the time. He did a good Brooklyn accent. He made him sound like he was from New York, but he also had this kind of everyman likability to him. He sounded very casual, very normal, but also sounded as energetic as he needed to for the situations in the movie. I bought him. I actually really bought him. I really liked his voice as Mario. Honestly, I love Charles Martinet, but if they, you know, started making Mario talk like this for some games in the future, I'd be totally cool with it, because, I mean, obviously they're not going to get Chris Pratt to voice every video game that comes out, but he's great. He's really good in the movie. Mario in general is just a likable character in the movie. I can't really think of anything to complain about. I think they did him perfectly. They did a good job of making him, again, like an everyman. He's very relatable. He's emotional, but he's not so emotional to the point where it's distracting. He's still like a default main protagonist, but they gave him enough personality and relatability to make him not boring. He's not just like, because, you know, many ensemble movies, the main character is usually boring and the supporting characters are the fun, funny, likable ones. But Mario has plenty of moments that make him likable, make him fun. So I think Mario in this movie is fantastic, honestly. As for Luigi, voiced by Charlie Day, Chris Pratt going in, I wasn't sure if his voice was going to be good or not. I thought it was a weird casting job. I just wasn't, you know, furious as most other people were. But Charlie Day, I thought no one was really saying anything worrisome about him, but I felt like from what we saw in the trailers, he's just doing Charlie Day. Like, he's just Charlie from Always Sunny coming out of Luigi's mouth. But seeing the movie, he definitely is doing a Brooklyn accent. I don't think it's quite as good as Chris Pratt's. I think, or even if it's not quite as good, I just think Charlie Day's bass voice is so distinct that I think it gets in the way of the accent a little bit more. It's a little harder to think of it just as Luigi and not as Charlie Day playing Luigi, whereas Chris Pratt, I don't even think of it as Chris Pratt playing Mario. I just think of that as that's Mario. But Charlie Day's still really good. He definitely brings a lot of fun to the role. When he, you know, gets all squeaky and scared and stuff, it works really well. Charlie Day's really good at doing that. He has that real cracky kind of voice. So I think Charlie Day did a pretty good job as Luigi. I just wish he had more to do. Again, I complained about this earlier, but Luigi is barely in the movie. It's just kind of a waste because, again, it's Super Mario Brothers. Like, he should be there. I'd be like making a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, but it's all about Leo and Mike, and Raph and Don are, like, absent for, like, 70% of the film. Or making, like, a Justice League movie, but it ends up being all about Superman, and all the other members are just locked away in some intergalactic prison somewhere the whole movie, and we barely see them. It wouldn't really be much of a team movie. The movie's named after the team, and we're not seeing the team. But what we do get of Luigi is good. I do like what we get. I just wish we saw more of him. And I wish his arc was a little more believable. It is kind of like he just goes from being super coward, boom, he's a hero now. And it is touching. The moment where he is using the manhole cover to block the fire that Bowser's shooting at Mario after he was, off hiding, and then he steps in to save Mario's life because he cares so much about his brother. That was touching. I actually did really like that moment. Although Luigi had to be a freaking beast to be able to lift a manhole cover. Those things are heavy, so... But, yeah, that was a little rushed, I think. It made that scene a little more powerful, I guess. That, he realized he had to step up at this moment. But I do wish there was just a little more time to grow with Luigi in the movie and watch him do more than just sit in a cage the whole film. Princess Peach is pretty good. The first 5 or 10 minutes she's in the movie, I thought I was going to hate her guts, because everything she says is kind of condescending, and she kind of comes off as a bit of a smug douche at first. She says some kind of nasty stuff to Mario, and she just has this kind of sass about her where she comes off as a little bit of a jerk when the movie first introduces her. But pretty quickly we get over that, and then she just becomes likable, and I liked, the dynamic between her and Mario. It was cute to see them become closer and everything. I do think I don't mind Peach being a badass, because, Peach has been a badass in the games for ages. She was a badass in the original animated show that I grew up watching, the Super Show. She was just as tough as the other characters. She's been playable in multiple games since Mario 2. She's in Smash Brothers. She was super tough in the original manga for Mario 3. But sometimes they can get a little carried away in modern times, and I do wish that even though she kicks ass, I do wish that she wasn't as overpowered as she is in the movie. There's a couple moments where I just feel like they just make her too much better than everyone else, and it kind of raises the question, well, why does she even need all these other people? Why does she need Mario? Why does she need the Kongs? Why does she need all these other people to help her when it seems like she's got the whole thing under control? I do think it would have been nice to have a couple moments of vulnerability or failure for Peach here and there, because every other character basically has that. So I do think that would have evened it out a little bit. But in general, I did like what they did with Princess Peach. I do think she was still likable ultimately. And they still, she doesn't feel too much like Peach from the games, but Mario characters in the games' personalities are so skin deep. It's who even is Peach in the games, really? So, she's not bad. I still like Peach in the movie. I will say, though, as far as the voice acting goes, nothing against Anya Taylor-Joy. She's a great actress. She's a very good actress, actually. But I just think the direction wasn't right for Peach. I'm not saying she has to have that very bubbly, over-the-top kind of voice that she has in the games. That could get just as annoying as Mario having a very squeaky voice for the whole movie. But I do think she could have had a little more personality, a little bit more fun to her voice. Mario and Luigi and, most of the characters have a lot of pep to their voices, a lot of range where they can sound very exaggerated for whatever emotion they're trying to portray. But Peach always just sounds very flat and kind of monotone and serious, and it makes her come off as boring, I think, unfortunately. I do think her voice makes her feel a little boring, and she's just doing serious American woman voice, and I kind of wish she was doing a little more. I don't know entirely where Anya Taylor-Joy is originally from, but I know she has an accent. I don't know if it's a British accent. I'm probably wrong if I said that. She might be New Zealand or something or whatever. But I think if she did a British accent, or even if she just used her regular accent, whatever it may be, it would have sounded a little more royal, at least, than what she's doing in the movie. I think if you're not going to get the fun, goofy, cute voice for Peach. I think at least getting like a royal voice for her would work. But she just kind of has this very stock, plain Jane kind of voice, and I don't think it really works for Peach. You look at the character's design, and she's so cutesy and bubbly and Betty Boopish. Like, she has those big eyes and everything, those, you know, cartoony little pouty lips and everything, and the bright colors, and she has a big head and everything, and you just imagine a more cartoonish voice coming out of such a cartoony looking character. But instead she has like a very dry, serious voice, while everyone else sounds cartoony. So that was the thing that really stood out for me. I think Anya Taylor-Joy is a great actress, but I just think the direction wasn't great for her voice. Toad is another one. I don't love his voice. Keegan-Michael Key is doing it. It sounds way better in the movie than it did in the trailers, I will say. When I first heard it in the trailers, I was like, ew, what the hell is that? I hate that. Stop it. Don't talk. Stop talking. While everyone else was freaking out about Chris Pratt in that first trailer, I was actually like, he sounds fine, but I hate Toad. Like, Toad sounds terrible because he just sounded like your average guy. And I think, like, his humor of, like, the whole, like, don't touch that mushroom kind of thing, I didn't like that whole, like, spastic kind of over-the-top humor that a lot of, you know, comedians do these days. To me, it just felt like too modern, you know, animated filmy for Toad. I know it's a modern animated film, but that doesn't really make any sense. But it felt too, like, you know, hyper comedy for Toad. I don't picture Mario characters being that, like, frantic all the time, but it's a pretty frantic movie. But yeah, I'll get to the comedy later. The comedy is probably, some of it's really funny, but I think for about half of it doesn't work for me. So the comedy's probably one of the things I like the least about the movie. I think I end up saying that so much about modern properties that I review. I think I'm just reaching a point where I have to admit that my sense of humor is just gone, and the modern sense of humor is not for me. The popular modern sense of humor. But Toad was pretty good. He's not my favorite character. I always forget he's even there. He's definitely the most forgettable out of the main four heroes, but he's good. He does everything he has to. It's, you know, it's cute how he instantly considers himself Mario's best friend, and I think that they did a good job with that in making sure that every character in the movie serves a purpose to Mario. Since Mario's the main character, every character in the film serves a direct purpose to Mario. They have a direct relationship to Mario, where Toad is Mario's best friend, Peach is Mario's mentor and potential love interest, Luigi is his brother and, you know, the MacGuffin, basically, of the movie. Donkey Kong is his friendly rival. Bowser is his enemy. Like, everybody is it's somehow a different relationship for Mario. In some way, they're a different relationship towards Mario, and I think that's a really good idea. And speaking of Donkey Kong, he was the voice I was not looking forward to the most. I've said it before on this channel, I'm not a huge fan of Seth Rogen. I don't know anything about the guy. I'm sure he's fine. I'm sure if I hung out with him, he'd be fine. But based on the stuff he does, I don't usually find him funny. I don't usually like the movies he's in. If I do, I usually don't like his performance. I think usually he's a terrible voice actor. Even in really good movies like Kung Fu Panda, Mantis just sounds like Seth Rogen and it's so out of place. And then other movies that are not as good, like Monsters vs. Aliens, The Blob just sounds like Seth Rogen, and I will never watch the live action, well, quote unquote live action CG Gore Fest. That is the remake of The Lion King. But he just sounds like Seth Rogen in that. So I'm not the biggest fan of Seth Rogen. So when I heard he was playing Donkey Kong, that was one I was pretty upset about. And he's not great. His voice doesn't really match Donkey Kong too much. And he doesn't really bring anything to the film. I don't feel like he really adds anything by being there. But he's not particularly bad either. I think he's actually kind of passable. He said he wasn't going to do a voice. He's definitely deepening his voice a little bit for Donkey Kong, I think. He's definitely voice acting, which I think is good. He's doing what I was just complaining about Anya Taylor-Joy kind of not doing, where he is kind of warping his voice and exaggerating his voice to match the wacky look of his character and the movements of his character. He does the Seth Rogen laugh once or twice, and I'm not really a fan of that. But, he could have been a lot worse. He could have been Cranky Kong. He's played by Fred Armisen. I'm not overly familiar with him. He's in a lot of stuff I've seen. Portlandia, and among other things. But I'm not overly familiar with him. He's not one of those guys who ever really, stood out to me or anything. But when I hear his voice, I don't think of Cranky Kong. And I'm not saying, Cranky Kong had to sound a specific way, but I just feel like it's just this loud, crazy, bonkers voice coming out of this, feeble old monkey. And it's really weird. It just doesn't match him. And I didn't realize it until I saw someone post it on Twitter that I completely agree I would have loved to hear Cranky Kong voiced by Larry David. That would have been amazing. So I really wish he was Larry David, but he's not. He's Fred Armisen. Again, I don't know who this guy is, but I think he's the worst performance. He's also just kind of annoying sometimes in the movie. The way he delivers lines are just kind of obnoxious every now and then, but I still liked Cranky enough. It wasn't so bad that it made me dislike the character. I still just loved seeing Cranky Kong in the movie. But now let's get to the one everyone's talking about, Jack Black as Bowser. Yes, he steals the show. He is the best voice actor. Well, he's one of two of the best voice actors in the movie. Jack Black is one of the few ones who's really, really just doing a heavy voice. You would swear he was a professional voice actor, the way he does Bowser. You can tell he's just having so much fun with it, and he's just giving it his all. He's so proud to be doing this voice. I will say Bowser was very funny in the movie, but it got a little slightly... I'm not complaining, because Bowser's one of the best things in the movie. But if I had to complain, I would say it got a little annoying how much they just turned him into a complete joke. He didn't feel like as much of a threat as he should have. They just really made him a loser in the movie, kind of. And he's very funny. I think a lot of the comedy that I really liked in the movie was from Bowser and Kamek. But they go pretty far with just making him a clown. I think sometimes it goes a bit too far. I have one friend who, when we all saw it in the theaters, and we were walking out, he was like, they made Bowser a total joke. What the hell was that? But I think it wasn't too bad, but yeah, I would have liked a little more moments of menacing Bowser. But Jack Black's doing a great job. I think it's also just funny that, he has this dynamic where he has to look like this hardened, badass ruler, evil ruler in front of all of his troops, while secretly under the surface he's just this schoolboy with a huge crush on Princess Peach, basically. He's madly in love with Peach. Everything about her, he goes on about how the shape of her bangs and everything. And the only one who consistently knows about this is Kamek, because he's his main underling. But I do think it's a very funny character setup for Bowser, and it is pretty true to how he is in the games. Any Mario RPG game, like the Mario and Luigi games and Super Mario RPG and all, Bowser is always kind of a doofus. He is kind of he is that character. He acts really tough and badass in front of his troops, but then, he has this sensitive side that they don't see. And that brings me to Kamek, the last of the main characters, voiced by Kevin Michael Richardson. Now, he's right up there with Bowser for me. I don't know, either Jack Black is the best or Kevin Michael Richardson is the best. They're both really good. I know him best as Sheriff Blubbs, I think his name was, on Gravity Falls. He does a lot of voice acting because he's actually a voice actor. He's the only member of the main cast who is actually a voice actor, and he does a fantastic job. He basically does what most people call Igor. It's not Igor, it's Peter Lorre. Peter Lorre never played Igor, but he's basically Peter Lorre. He's doing a spin on it. It's not 100% Peter Lorre, but it's basically Peter Lorre. And I think that works so good for Magic Koopa, because even though Peter Lorre was not Igor, and even though Igor is not Fritz, that's a whole nother story, Peter Lorre did play the sidekick to evil people a lot. Usually that person was Vincent Price in the movies. But he did play, like, you know, a sidekick in a gothic horror setup a lot, or a sidekick to an evil, horrible person. So I think that works really good as Bowser's main sidekick. Especially since, you know, he's so much smaller than Bowser and all. It's kind of that Vincent Price, Peter Lorre, you know, dynamic going on. But I thought Kamek was really good. His voice is just so fun. It's the only voice I will ever accept for Kamek from now on. I like how they put the shell under his coat, under his robe, which you never saw in the games, but it kind of creates the illusion he's a hunchback sometimes. But it's really just his shell. I thought the scene where, it was a callback to New Super Mario Bros. Wii, actually, but the scene where Bowser's practicing his wedding speech to Peach, he has Kamek dressed up as Peach and acting the role of Peach. I thought that was funny, especially with, like, how into it Kamek's getting. But yeah, actually, I liked Kamek a lot. I actually almost wish there was more of Kamek in the movie. The whole thing with the piano lid on the fingers was funny also. I guess I have to talk about Peaches because it, like, blew up. It's one of the big things from this movie that everyone's talking about. I guess, like, there's not too many nicknames you could do, but I find Peaches to be kind of like a weird, kind of an uncreative nickname for Peach. He just calls her Peaches. But, whatever. It's funny. The song's definitely funny, but I don't think I quite love it as much as other people do. People are going nuts for this Bowser song, and it is funny. The moment in the movie's very funny when he's doing it. But I just feel like when I heard Jack Black was doing a song in the movie, I was hoping for, like, a crazy villain song, like a big theatrical villain song, like Scar's Be Prepared from The Lion King, or Rasputin's In the Dark of the Night from Anastasia or something. Like, I was, like, picturing this big triumphant villain army hyping, like, song. But instead we got, like, this heartfelt, like, ballad about Peach, which, again, is funny. I'm happy we got it, but I was honestly hoping for something a little bigger than that. But it's still funny. It did its job, and everyone in my theater was, like, laughing their asses off on that scene. So good job on that one, Nintendo. I guess I'll cover the comedy, because I said that was a very hit or miss thing for me. As I just said, a lot of the comedy with Bowser and Kamek, I thought, and just the troops in general, was hilarious. I think when Bowser's first riling up his troops and then slips in the thing about him marrying Peach, the reaction of the troops is really funny. There's a lot of funny stuff with the villains. There's some funny stuff in the with the Kongs. I think some of the Kongs humor is funny. But then there's just some comedy that I just don't find that funny. There's that weird bit with, like, the dog at the beginning, which that felt the most like an Illumination movie. It felt like we just stepped into, like, Secret Life of Pets for a bit. But even that kind of came around at the end, where when the Mario Brothers are the Super Mario Brothers and saving the day, the dog kind of, like, looks at Luigi and salutes him like he respects him now. So even that kind of came around and was funny. I would say probably the running gag that I just hated in this movie, I just cringed every time, I didn't think it was funny, was the blue Luma. And I know people love the Luma. I know that's, like, one of the most popular gags in the movie. Like, my theater was dying every time it came on the screen. I saw it in the trailer that dropped with it, and I didn't like that in the trailer. I thought it was really unfunny. Just, like, the idea has just been done to death of, like, oh, here's a really cute, over-the-top cutesy thing, but it's really dark and messed up, and it says things that just aren't right. And I just think, like, you know, crazy cute thing that's psychopathic, like, I don't find that funny anymore. The internet's been doing that joke for, like, 20 years. I think it's, like, a cheap attempt at comedy, and they just kept doing it. And, like, every time it does says one of those lines, someone else in the cages has to be like, oh, come on, man, that's too dark. That's just going too far. Like, they have to tell the audience how screwed up what that thing just said was, instead of letting the thing just say a screwed up thing. So it's just kind of that comedy where like it has to explain itself. It doesn't have to, but it thinks it has to. It already isn't funny, but then when characters draw attention to it and explain it, it makes it even less funny. But you're supposed to love that character, and that's even how the movie ends, actually, before the after credit scenes. The movie ends just with that giant Luma just comes onto the screen and starts talking, and then randomly it starts playing saxophone or something. It just seems that they knew, like, this is the thing you're going to love most from this movie, and it was the thing I hated most, was that Luma. I think it was actually something like the director's daughter or something, or someone who worked in the movie's daughter, like, voicing it, and that's pretty adorable, but I don't know, I didn't find the humor of that star funny. I just found it to be cringy for me personally. I know, say what you will about that word. I don't like using it all the time either, but there's really no other way to describe it. It was just like, ooh, yeah, I don't know about that one. That's they can't all be winners, I guess. Although I guess most people think that is a winner. But one thing before I get to the conclusion, I guess I just want to mention real quick is it's not something that's happening too much now, but about a week or two, or like a month or two before the movie came out, I saw like a lot of people suddenly dumping on the Sonic movies and saying that they aren't actually that good, and despite what everyone was saying in recent years, they're actually very flawed because they didn't do it like the Mario movie did it, and the Mario movie is how you really do it. And I kind of hate that attitude of like, we all loved and celebrated something, but then once something that's potentially better comes along, everyone just turns their back on the thing they loved and just dumps all over it. And it's like, well, did you even like it that much to begin with? Or are you just following whatever you're supposed to be saying because everyone else is saying it? I think the Sonic movies are still a ton of fun, still great family adventure movies. And also, they are good at representing the games. They're much more faithful to the games than most other video game movies are, especially video game movies based on family franchises. The Mario movie in no way changes my opinion of the Sonic movies. I still think those movies are great. And I'm still looking forward to Sonic 3 probably just as much as I'm looking forward to Mario 2. Also, that whole mentality was so dumb because it's like, the Mario movie wasn't even out yet. What if it turned out to suck? What if it came out and it was terrible? Then all those people would have to swallow their words and go back and say the Sonic movies are better and stuff. It's like, don't you get sick of having to jump back and forth all the time? Can't you just say your honest opinion? But also in contrast to that whole argument that like, you know, the Mario movie did it right. They stayed 100% true to the games, and everything in the movie is a reference to the games. Everything is from the games. It takes place in that world. It has all those characters and all those items and then everything. That is how you do a video game movie. That doesn't really apply to every video game franchise, because Mario is something that basically every single human being on Earth is familiar with. Like, you can make references to blue shells in Mario Kart, or Mario Kart in general, and, you know, banana peels in Mario Kart, and throwing shells at other carts and all this stuff. You can make all these deep dive references to Super Mario Brothers, and most human beings who watch this movie are going to understand them. You can't really do that for every game. Even something as beloved as Sonic, you know, it's one of the highest grossing game franchises of all time, but your average person doesn't know that much about Sonic. They know the characters, like the main characters. They know he goes fast. They might know the Green Hill Zone look or something. But most people don't know that much. And I think that's also because Sonic has changed so much more drastically over the years than Mario has. Mario's kind of held on to its identity and just kind of built on it over the years, whereas Sonic's constantly tried new things, and I don't think it's a bad thing. They've gotten some great games out of that. But I just think as far as brand recognition goes, it makes it a little harder to do this sort of thing for Sonic, because you look at the original Genesis games and you look at the Sonic Adventure games, and one's like this crazy pinball universe with surreal graphics and bright, colorful, crazy, impossible worlds. And then the other one is this very grounded, realistic world with this edgy skater motif and everything. So it's very different from like one generation to the next in Sonic. So those things don't really mesh well together. It would be hard to make a world that encompasses all of Sonic's history. And it would also be hard to make a movie that just has all these deep dive references to Sonic without losing casual audiences, because casual audiences can mostly put up, except for the crazy critics who don't know anything about Mario because, I don't know, they were made in a test tube somewhere. But your average audience member has played multiple Mario games before. So, like, even if they don't get all of them, they'll generally get the Mario movie. But even, again, like something like Sonic, even something like Zelda, I don't think you could go that deep with them and get as many audience members as you did with the Mario movie. I think the Sonic movies honestly benefited from having Jim Carrey, taking place in the real world, having references to modern culture and everything, so that audience members who don't know about or care about Sonic the Hedgehog can still get into and enjoy the movie. Or Mario doesn't need to do that because it knows everyone in the audience already loves Mario. So I don't think the argument is really fair to be like, oh, every video game movie has to do what Mario did now. Because, you know, if a Mega Man movie comes out and it's all about the games, I will love that. I will watch that 1,000 times. But your average audience member is not going to get it, so it's not going to feel as charming as it does for Mario. In general, I would say Mario is a solid 7 out of 10, maybe 8 out of 10. Let's say 7.5 out of 10, just to be obnoxious. I think it's good. I might put it as 7, just because I do think it's really good. I do think it did everything it needed to do, even though it's not like a perfect movie. I wouldn't say it's like, you know, screenwriting work of art or anything. But I will say, just being an entertaining, fun family film about a franchise everyone loves, it basically does it perfectly. It does everything you need it to do. I'm looking forward to rewatching it already. But I will say, it isn't the greatest story ever told, and it does have some flaws. Like I said, I do find some of the humor to be kind of annoying and cheap, and it's not the most well-structured movie, but in general, I would say it's very good. I think most people are going to like it. Most people will probably put it between a 7 and a 9, I think, out of 10, was where probably most audience members would put it. So I guess the last thing to talk about is the future of this franchise. So supposedly, don't quote me on this, I heard there was an interview with, I believe, Chris Pratt, where he said that, you know, the after credit scene is going to hint towards something much bigger than just a sequel. He's like, Nintendo's trying to make a whole universe of films. So don't think small, like, oh, it's from Mario 2. You got to think like, oh, there's going to be more to this world. So I was going in like, oh crap, what's this end credit scene going to be? Is this going to be, you know, for the Donkey Kong movie that we pretty much already know is happening? Or is this going to be for like freaking Zelda? Is like the Triforce going to show up or something? And no, it's just Yoshi. It's just a Mario character. A Mario character who, while Yoshi himself didn't show up in the movie, other Yoshis were stampeding in the background, which, again, is a thing I hate. How it's kind of like the Toad thing. Like, Yoshi isn't really a character anymore, usually. There's just a species of Yoshi, and their names are Yoshi, and their species is Yoshi, and all they say is Yoshi. They're basically just Pokemon now. And I know even in Mario World, there was like Red Yoshi and Yellow Yoshi and Blue Yoshi, and early concepts, those were all different types of dinosaurs. There was like, the blue one was a pterosaur and everything, but yeah, I get that, like, you know, there's always been Yoshis, but I like thinking that there's one Yoshi. So the one Yoshi character named Yoshi is teased at the end of the movie. So I don't know if that's going to be for Mario 2. I'm guessing it is because it's in Brooklyn where we actually see the egg, which is strange. Or if it's going to actually be a Yoshi movie. I don't think it's going to be a Yoshi movie. It could actually end up being a Yoshi's Island movie. So as weird as that may sound, because, you know, in Yoshi's Island, Mario and Luigi are babies, and actually the plot, again, is that Luigi is kidnapped and Mario and Yoshi have to go save him. But we maybe are seeing something that happened in the past. Maybe Yoshi hatched in the past in Brooklyn, and the story of Yoshi's Island happened. So they're trying to basically say, potentially, that both Mario origin stories happened. I personally hope they don't do that, because I never liked the plot of Yoshi's Island. I never liked that rewrite. I always preferred the whole Brooklyn backstory. That's what it was for like a decade and a half before Yoshi's Island showed up. But regardless, Yoshi is going to be in the sequel, I guess. Again, I don't know if there are going to be sequels, or if it's going to be... Obviously, there's going to be a sequel. The movie made so much damn money. But I wonder if they are going to try other franchises. I think if they did, I would say the 5 we're probably getting are Mario, Donkey Kong, Animal Crossing, Splatoon, and Zelda. I'd say those 5 are the most likely. The only reason I haven't put Pokemon in there is because Pokemon is always kind of this weird, separate thing for Nintendo. They do Pokemon Directs instead of putting them in Nintendo Directs. They really don't cross over much. They really only do in Smash Brothers. It just seems like Nintendo and Pokemon are distant. Plus, we already had a Pokemon movie recently with Detective Pikachu, which I was not crazy about. But I don't see Pokemon working its way into this world. I would love a movie like a Punch-Out movie, but I don't think we're going to get that. I think those 5 I just named, I think, are probably the most likely. Those are the ones Nintendo pushes the most. Those are the ones that make the most money these days. If they are crossing over all these movies, that does make me worry a little bit that they're all going to have to kind of be in this more comedic tone so that they can cross over properly. I don't really want Zelda being that comedic. I don't mind a few funny moments, but I don't want it being like that style of humor. I think Zelda should still take itself very seriously. And I will say I'm happy that even though the Mario movie is very comedic, that it did take itself seriously when it needed to. Like, it was committed to the world and all. But I think Zelda should be very serious. And I think it would rob it of its potential if they were to just make it the same level of goofiness as Mario, just so that they can do some Avengers crap and make a Smash Brothers movie. But I do think definitely those would be the most likely movies. We basically know we're getting Donkey Kong again. I'm curious if we're going to get King K. Rool and the Kremlings in it, or if they feel that might be too confusing for audiences, that might be too close to Bowser, because he's a big round reptile. I don't know, I really hope they do the Kremlings, because they're so iconic. I think the most popular characters that everyone's saying they want in the sequel are Wario and Waluigi. I would absolutely love to see Wario show up at some point. I don't give a damn about Waluigi. I still think of him as a nothing character. Sorry, I know he has a lot of fans, but everyone always wants Wario paired with Waluigi, but I'm like, between Wario Land and WarioWare, Wario has so many unique characters to interact with. Like WarioWare, he has a whole group of friends who are all completely unique characters, while Luigi's just dark Luigi. It's like, oh, just take some qualities of Luigi, take some qualities of Wario, and throw them together. And it's like, he's just a lazy idea. Like, what's he gonna do? Beat people up with a tennis racket in the movie? Like, I don't know. I just find Waluigi, like, I like his design, I like his voice, but I don't think he's essential. I'd be kind of mad, honestly, if Waluigi was in the movie before the Koopalings were ever in. Or even characters I don't care about, like Bowser Jr. deserves to be in before Waluigi. Daisy deserves to be in before Waluigi. My biggest hope is the Koopalings will show up. I love the Koopalings. I love the Ludwig von Koopa reference on the piano. It's perfect on the piano, too, because, you know, as they say in Mario World, he conducts Koopa symphonies. That was my favorite Easter eggs. I just love the Koopalings. I always have. So I really hope they show up. I was really happy they weren't in this movie, though, because I was really afraid that there were so many characters already that if they crammed in the Koopalings, that's like 7 more characters they have to introduce, and they were just going to be rushed and crappy. So I'm actually glad they weren't in. I really, really hope they do show up in the sequel, though. I don't really know what I would want the sequel story to be. I don't think they're going to actually do Mario 2 and do Subcon and Wart and Mouser and all that stuff. I would love that. That would be really cool, but I don't think they're going to. So I don't know exactly what the plot's going to be. I don't know if they're going to go just, you know, the way Sonic's doing it, just go to Mario 3. Or if they're going to do something more like how they did in this movie, where it's kind of like a culmination of a bunch of different stuff. Like maybe take some aspects from Galaxy, and maybe take some aspects from Sunshine, and maybe some aspects from 3, and maybe some aspects from 6 Gold Coins and Yoshi's Island, and just kind of throw them all together into one coherent story. I think that's more likely, honestly, for the plot than getting a direct adaptation of any one game. And I think that's also the best way to please the crowd, probably, because then you get a little bit of everything in there. But my biggest hope would be the Kooplings. So, yeah, that's basically everything I have to say about the Mario movie. This actually ended up going on a lot longer than I thought it was going to. I thought this was going to be like a 25-minute video for some reason. It's nowhere near that. But, yeah, go see it. It's worth it. It's a great movie. Do all the liking and subscribing and the sharing and the bell stuff.